In a Pacific Heights garage, a tech mogul was about to discover devastating betrayal. What started as a triumphant homecoming took a shocking turn when she came face to face with an empty space. Emma Turner wasn't your typical executive. For 9 years, she had built a cybersecurity empire, known for her emotional walls and business ruthlessness. When she encountered her missing 1967 Mustang, she had no idea she was walking into dangerous family secrets. Emma's pursuit of her estranged sister would unleash consequences involving loan sharks and corporate rivals. What began as theft would become survival. Both sisters would discover that some betrayals carry deadly prices. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Boeing 777 touched down at San Francisco International with the gentle bump that always reminded Emma Turner of coming home. Through the first-class window, she watched the familiar fog rolling across the bay, its gray tendrils reaching toward the city like fingers searching for something lost. After 3 months in Singapore's relentless humidity and glass towers, even the airport's industrial sprawl looked welcoming. Emma gathered her leather briefcase, the same one she'd carried since closing her first $1 million contract, and checked her phone. 17 missed calls, 43 emails, and a text from her assistant confirming tomorrow's board meeting. The Meridian deal was finally sealed. 3 months of 18-hour days and careful negotiations that would expand her cybersecurity company into the Southeast Asian market. Her father would have been proud. The thought caught her off guard, as it always did. Michael Turner had been dead for 9 years, but Emma still found herself measuring her achievements against his memory, still heard his voice in quiet moments. Success isn't just about the money, Em. It's about building something that lasts. As she deplaned, Emma noticed Marcus Rivera maintaining his discreet distance in the terminal, 6'2", graying at the temples, moving with the controlled awareness of someone who'd learned vigilance in harder places than airport corridors. Marcus had been her security detail for 8 months now, ever since David Kim's threats had escalated beyond angry emails and into something the FBI took seriously. She'd resisted the protection at first. Emma Turner didn't need a bodyguard, but Marcus was different. Professional without being intrusive, competent without being obvious. Ms. Turner. Marcus fell into step beside her as they approached baggage claim, his voice carrying the quiet authority she'd grown accustomed to. Flight comfortable? Long? Emma replied, adjusting the strap of her carry-on. Any developments while I was gone? Quiet on all fronts. Kim's been focused on his own company's quarterly reports. No unusual activity around your properties or office. Marcus paused, scanning the crowd with practiced eyes. Elena's waiting with the car. Thought you might want to head straight home rather than the office. Elena Vasquez, Marcus's second-in-command, had joined the team 2 months ago. Former SFPD detective with a specialty in organized crime, though Emma had never asked why that expertise might be relevant to protecting a tech executive from a jealous competitor. She trusted Marcus's judgment, and he trusted Elena. That was enough. The ride through the city felt surreal after Singapore's ordered efficiency. San Francisco's controlled chaos. The steep hills, the eclectic architecture, the homeless encampments existing alongside million-dollar condos, reminded Emma why she'd never seriously considered relocating her company despite the tax incentives other states offered. This city had shaped her, given her the hunger and resilience that built Turner Cybersecurity from nothing into a $100 million company. Her Pacific Heights penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a converted 1920s mansion, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the bay and Alcatraz. Emma had bought it 5 years ago, during the company's first major growth spurt, when she'd realized that success meant more than just surviving. It meant having something beautiful, something that couldn't be taken away by landlords or creditors or circumstances beyond her control. I'll do a sweep, Marcus said as they rode the private elevator to her floor. Standard protocol. Emma nodded, though after 3 months away she felt like a guest in her own home. The penthouse was exactly as she'd left it. Her housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, had maintained everything perfectly. Fresh flowers in the entryway, mail sorted and stacked, the subtle scent of lavender and lemon that made the space feel lived in despite Emma's frequent absences. But something felt wrong. She couldn't identify it at first, just an itch between her shoulder blades. The same instinct that had served her well in hostile boardrooms and tense negotiations. Emma set down her briefcase and moved through the living room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors. Everything appeared normal. The Basquiat paintings she'd bought at auction, the Persian rug that had belonged to her grandmother, the view of the Golden Gate Bridge partially obscured by evening fog, the garage. Emma's breath caught as she realized what was missing from her evening routine. Usually, when she returned from long trips, she'd check on her cars first thing. A quirk her assistant had never understood, but one that grounded Emma in a way that expensive art and designer furniture never could. Her small collection represented more than transportation. Each vehicle was a milestone, a reward for another goal achieved. She took the elevator down to the building's private garage level, her heart rate increasing with each floor. The garage was climate-controlled, with individual spaces for each penthouse unit. Emma's section held 4 vehicles: her daily driver Tesla, the vintage Porsche 356 she'd bought herself for her 25th birthday, the Range Rover for weekend trips to Napa, and the space where her 1967 Mustang Fastback should have been was empty. Emma stared at the vacant spot, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The car couldn't be gone. She hadn't driven it in months. The Mustang was too precious, too connected to memories she couldn't bear to risk in San Francisco traffic. But the space was definitely empty, just oil stains on concrete where her most treasured possession should have been. "Ms. Turner?" Marcus appeared behind her, having completed his security sweep. "Everything all right?" "My car." Emma's voice sounded strange to her own ears, thin and distant. "The Mustang. It's gone." Marcus's expression shifted immediately, his casual alertness becoming sharp focus. "When did you last see it?" "Before I left for Singapore. 3 months ago." Emma moved closer to the empty space, as if proximity might reveal some explanation. "I checked on it the night before my flight. It was here." The memories came flooding back unbidden. Her father presenting her with the keys on her 16th birthday, his calloused hands placing them in her palm with ceremony that now seemed almost sacred. "This car's been in our family since your grandfather bought it new in '67, he'd said, his voice rough with emotion. "Take care of it, Em, it's got all our stories in it." Emma had driven that car through high school, through community college when money was tight, through the early years of building her company when she'd slept in the office more often than her own bed. When she'd moved to the penthouse, she'd bought the garage space specifically to keep the Mustang safe, protected, preserved. "Who has access to this garage?" Marcus's questions were professional, methodical, but Emma could hear the concern beneath his training. "Me. The building manager for emergencies." Emma's throat felt tight, and the realization hit her like cold water. Maya. Her sister had a spare key, given during one of their brief reconciliations 2 years ago when Maya's car had broken down and she'd needed reliable transportation for job interviews. Emma had forgotten about the key during the months of silence that followed their last argument. "Ms. Turner?" Marcus was studying her face, reading her expression with the same careful attention he gave to potential threats. "My sister," Emma whispered. "Maya has a key." She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, scrolling to Maya's contact. The call went straight to voicemail. A generic automated message, not even Maya's voice. Emma tried again, then a third time, each unanswered ring tightening the knot in her chest. Maya Turner Rodriguez. 3 years younger, stubbornly independent, perpetually struggling. The sister who'd accused Emma of abandoning their family in pursuit of wealth, who'd walked out of their father's funeral reception because she couldn't stand watching Emma network with the mourners. The sister Emma hadn't spoken to in 6 months, not since their last fight about money and responsibility and the different ways they'd chosen to honor their father's memory. "I need to see her," Emma said, the words coming out harder than she'd intended. "Tonight." Marcus nodded, his hand already moving to his earpiece to contact Elena. "I'll arrange security for the visit." As they rode the elevator back to her penthouse, Emma stared at her reflection in the polished steel doors. Successful businesswoman, tech industry pioneer, self-made millionaire. But underneath all of that, she was still just a daughter who'd lost her father too young, a sister who'd let ambition create distance from the only family she had left. The Mustang wasn't just a car. It was the last tangible connection to the man who'd raised them both, who'd worked double shifts at the docks to keep them fed and housed after their mother left. It was the vehicle that had taken Emma to her first job interview, that had been parked outside when she'd signed her first major contract, that had sat in her garage like a talisman of everything she'd built. And now it was gone, sold by the one person who should have understood what it meant. Emma's hands clenched into fists as the elevator climbed toward her empty penthouse. She'd spent 3 months building bridges in Singapore, creating partnerships and opportunities that would secure her company's future. But somehow, while she was expanding her empire, she'd lost the one thing that connected her to her past. The fog was thickening outside her windows as Emma prepared to confront her sister for the first time in months. Whatever Maya had done, whatever desperate circumstances had driven her to sell their father's car, Emma was going to get it back. Even if it meant tearing down the walls they'd built between them in the process. The city lights blurred through the mist as Marcus coordinated their route to the Mission District. Emma stood at her window, looking out at the place that had made her who she was, and wondered if success was worth anything when you had no one left to share it with. Marcus's hand rested lightly on his earpiece as Emma stared out the passenger window of the black SUV, watching the city transform from Pacific Heights, manicured elegance to the Mission District's vibrant chaos. The transition always struck her, how quickly wealth could give way to struggle in San Francisco, sometimes within the span of a single block. Murals covered building walls here, telling stories of resilience and resistance, while the scent of street food mixed with exhaust fumes and the distant sound of BART trains rumbling underground. "Turn left on 24th, Emma directed, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. She hadn't been to Maya's apartment in over a year, not since their explosive argument about Emma's blood money and Maya's victim mentality. The words still stung, partly because they'd both been partially right. The building was a 3-story Victorian conversion, painted sunshine yellow with blue trim that had seen better decades. Emma counted the windows to the 2nd floor, finding the one with the Spider-Man decal that Sophia had insisted on placing there despite Maya's protests about losing their security deposit. Even from the street, she could see the glow of a television through thin curtains. "I'll wait here," Marcus said, pulling up across the street. "Elena's positioned at the rear exit. Standard precaution." Emma nodded, though part of her wondered if having security backup for a family confrontation was evidence of how far apart she and Maya had drifted. When they were children, sharing a bedroom in their father's cramped apartment, they'd fought and reconciled a dozen times a day. Now they needed intermediaries and careful planning just to occupy the same space. The building's front door required a key, but Emma remembered Maya's habit of propping it open with a folded matchbook when she was expecting someone. Sure enough, the latch was disabled. Emma climbed the narrow stairs, each step echoing in the confined space, her designer heels clicking against worn linoleum. The hallway smelled of cooking, garlic and cumin, and something sweet that might have been plantains. Apartment 2B. But underneath the anger, she could see the exhaustion in Maya's face, the shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible choices. "How much?" Emma asked quietly. "What? How much did you get for it?" Maya's silence was answer enough. Emma waited, watching her sister's internal struggle play out in micro-expressions of shame and defiance. 12,000, Maya whispered finally. Emma closed her eyes. The Mustang was worth at least 60,000 in its current condition, possibly more to the right collector. Maya had been desperate enough to accept whatever quick cash she could get, probably from some dealer who specialized in taking advantage of people with no other options. "Jesus, Maya, you practically gave it away." "I know," Maya's voice was barely audible. "I know, okay?" But Sophia couldn't breathe, and the hospital wanted payment up front for the nebulizer treatments. And I had already maxed out my credit cards for the previous visits. What was I supposed to do, let my daughter suffer, because I was too proud to touch your precious car? The accusation hit Emma like a physical blow. Your precious car. As if her attachment to their father's memory was somehow selfish, somehow less important than immediate practical needs. But looking at Sophia, seeing the child's obvious health and happiness, Emma couldn't maintain her anger entirely. Who did you sell it to? Emma asked. Maya hesitated again, and Emma recognized the expression. Her sister was calculating, trying to determine how much truth she could afford to reveal. Maya, who bought Dad's car? Some collector. He said he specialized in vintage American muscle cars. Paid cash, no questions asked. Maya's words came out in a rush, as if speed might somehow soften their impact. Name? I don't remember exactly. Rodriguez, maybe? Or Ramirez? He had a business card, but you didn't keep it. Emma's voice carried a disappointment that cut deeper than anger. You sold our father's car to some stranger for a fraction of its value, and you didn't even keep records. I kept the bill of sale, Maya said defensively. And the money went to good use. Sophia's healthy now. The treatments worked. Isn't that what Dad would have wanted? The question hung between them, impossible to answer without revealing too much about their different relationships with their father's memory. Emma had preserved the car as a shrine to his values, hard work, family loyalty, building something lasting. Maya saw those same values in action, using whatever resources were available to protect the next generation. There's something else, Maya said quietly, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. The money from the car. It wasn't enough to cover everything. Emma felt ice forming in her stomach. What do you mean? I mean, I still owe money. To people who aren't as patient as credit card companies. Maya glanced toward Sophia, making sure her daughter was still absorbed in her television program. Bad people, Emma. The kind who don't accept payment plans. The room seemed to shrink around them, the cozy domestic space suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable. Emma thought of Marcus waiting in the SUV outside, of Elena positioned at the rear exit, of the security protocols that had become second nature after months of threats from David Kim. She'd been living in a world where danger was sophisticated. Corporate espionage, cyber attacks, boardroom betrayals. Maya's world was more immediate, more visceral. How much do you owe? Emma asked, though she was beginning to suspect that the amount wasn't the real problem. 50,000, Maya whispered. With interest and penalties. Emma's mind raced through calculations, through possibilities and consequences. 50,000 was nothing to her, a rounding error on her quarterly taxes, less than she'd spent on wine at last month's client dinner. But the people Maya owed weren't interested in simple repayment. They were interested in control, in leverage, in the kind of fear that kept their other clients compliant. Emma, Maya continued, her voice breaking slightly, I think I'm in real trouble, and I think I might have made it your trouble too. Outside, a car door slammed. Both sisters looked toward the window, where the glow of streetlights was interrupted by shadows that might have been men moving with purpose. Emma felt her phone buzz against her hip, a text from Marcus that she didn't need to read to understand. They'd found her, and now they knew exactly how much Emma Turner was worth. Emma's phone buzzed again, Marcus's signal that they needed to move. She glanced toward the window, where shadows shifted between streetlights, then back at Maya, who was watching her with growing alarm. Pack a bag, Emma said quietly, her voice carrying the authority that had closed million-dollar deals. You and Sophia, now. What? Emma, I can't just… Maya, Emma's tone cut through her sister's protests. Those people outside aren't here to collect $50,000. They're here because they know I'm worth a lot more than that. She stood, moving toward Sophia with deliberate calm. Hey, sweetheart, how would you like to have a sleepover at Aunt Emma's house? Sophia looked up from her program, eyes bright with curiosity rather than fear. Really? In your castle? Really? Emma smiled, though her attention remained split between the child and the window. But we need to pack quickly, like we're going on an adventure. Maya was already moving, her maternal instincts overriding her pride. She grabbed a backpack from the closet, stuffing it with Sophia's clothes and medications, while Emma helped the little girl gather her favorite toys. The domestic efficiency was almost surreal. 3 generations of Turner women working together under threat. Muscle memory of childhood fire drills, translating into adult crisis management. Emma's phone vibrated with an incoming call. Marcus. "We've got company." His voice was tight, professional. 2 vehicles, multiple occupants. Elena's identified at least 1 weapon. Back exit is still clear, but not for long. Understood. 2 minutes. Emma ended the call and turned to Maya, who was sealing Sophia's inhaler in a Ziploc bag with the practiced efficiency of a mother who'd managed medical emergencies before. "Is there another way out of this building?" Emma asked. "Fire escape. Leads to the alley behind Ramirez's market." Maya shouldered the backpack, then lifted Sophia with the fluid motion of someone who'd been carrying this child for 6 years. "Emma, what's happening? Who are those people?" Later. Emma moved to the window, peering through the curtain. The shadows had resolved into men, 4 of them, standing beside 2 dark sedans. Professional posture, coordinated movement. Not street-level thugs, but not quite corporate security either. Something in between, which made them more dangerous than either extreme. They made their way through Maya's apartment to the fire escape, Emma's heels clicking against the metal grating as they descended. The alley smelled of garbage and motor oil, narrow enough that Elena appeared at the far end within seconds of their emergence. "Clear route to the extraction point," Elena reported into her earpiece, then addressed Emma directly. "Marcus is bringing the vehicle around." The SUV appeared at the alley's mouth, Marcus behind the wheel with the engine running. They moved quickly. Emma in the front passenger seat, Maya and Sophia in the back, Elena maintaining rear security. As they pulled away from the building, Emma caught a glimpse of men entering through the front entrance they'd just abandoned. "Where to?" Marcus asked, navigating through the mission's narrow streets with the confident efficiency of someone who'd done emergency extractions before. "Safe house," Emma replied, then glanced back at Maya. "We need to talk about exactly who you borrowed money from." Sophia had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder, the excitement of their adventure giving way to the exhaustion that children carried like a superpower. Maya stroked her daughter's hair, her voice barely above a whisper. "His name is Vincent Torres. People call him Vinny. He runs some kind of financial services company, but everyone knows it's just a front." Maya's words came out in fragments, as if speaking them too clearly might make them more real. When Sophia's treatments got expensive, and the hospital started demanding payment up front, someone at work told me about him. Said he helped people with bad credit, no questions asked. Emma felt Marcus's attention sharpen, though his eyes remained on the road. Elena turned slightly in her seat, her police background evident in the way she absorbed information. "What kind of terms?" Elena asked. 30% annual interest. No collateral required, just proof of income." Maya's laugh held no humor. It seemed like a miracle at the time. $40,000, deposited in my account within 24 hours. I thought I could pay it back in 2 years, maybe 3. "But the interest compounded faster than you expected," Emma said, understanding the predatory mathematics even as she spoke. And then Sophia had another episode. Emergency room, 3 days in the hospital, new medications. Maya's voice cracked slightly. The insurance company fought every claim. "I kept borrowing more just to stay current on the original loan." Marcus caught Emma's eye in the rearview mirror, a silent communication that she'd learned to read over months of working together. This wasn't just about money anymore. Vincent Torres had identified Emma as a target the moment Maya had mentioned her wealthy sister, and men like Torres didn't let opportunities like that slip away quietly. "We need to find my car," Emma said, the words coming out harder than she'd intended. "Emma, forget about the car," Maya protested. "This is bigger than—" "No." Emma turned in her seat, facing her sister directly. "The car is evidence. It's proof of what Torres is doing, how he operates. And more importantly, it's the one thing I care about that he can't buy, threaten, or steal." She paused, seeing her father's face in her memory, remembering his voice. "Sometimes you have to fight for what matters, Em. Even when the smart money says to walk away. We get the car back, we get proof of Torres's operation, and we end this. Marcus was already reaching for his phone, speed dialing a number Emma didn't recognize. Elena, start working your contacts at SFPD. We need information on Vincent Torres, operations, associates, any ongoing investigations. Already on it, Elena replied, her own phone emerging. I've got a friend in financial crimes who owes me a favor. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in the Richmond district, maintained by Marcus's security firm for exactly these kinds of situations. As they helped Maya and Sophia get settled, Emma felt the familiar sensation of her world expanding beyond the carefully controlled boundaries she'd built around her success. For 9 years she'd believed that money could solve any problem, that enough security could prevent any threat. But Vincent Torres wasn't interested in just money. He was interested in control, in the kind of leverage that turned successful people into assets. And Emma Turner, despite all her wealth and security, had just discovered that some predators were patient enough to wait for their prey to come to them. As Sophia curled up on the safe house couch, still wearing her dinosaur pajamas, Emma realized that getting her father's car back was no longer about sentiment or memory. It was about proving that some things couldn't be taken, some people couldn't be controlled, and some families were worth fighting for. Even when the fight came with a price neither sister had expected to pay. Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming message as dawn broke over the Richmond district safe house. Emma watched him read the text, his expression shifting from neutral professionalism to something approaching concern. Elena found it, he said, looking up from the screen. Your Mustang. It's in an auto shop in Oakland, Ramirez Custom Motors. But there's a problem. Emma felt her stomach tighten. What kind of problem? The kind where your car isn't in one piece anymore. 20 minutes later, they were driving across the Bay Bridge in Marcus's personal vehicle, a nondescript Honda that wouldn't attract attention in Oakland's industrial district. Maya had insisted on staying at the safe house with Sophia, partly for the child's safety, but mostly because she couldn't bear to see what had been done to their father's car. Ramirez Custom Motors occupied a corner lot in a neighborhood where legitimate businesses shared space with operations that preferred to avoid city inspectors. The building was surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire, and the parking lot was filled with vehicles in various states of modification and dismantlement. There, Elena pointed from the back seat. Bay 3. Even from the street, Emma could see the Mustang's distinctive fastback silhouette. But something was wrong with the proportions, the stance. As they drove closer, the reason became clear. The car had been stripped. The wheels were gone, replaced by concrete blocks. The hood stood open, revealing an empty engine bay. Various body panels had been removed, leaving the frame looking skeletal and violated. Emma's hands clenched into fists. They're parting it out. Standard practice for stolen vehicles, Elena said grimly. Strip the valuable components, sell them separately. Makes the car harder to trace, and the parts more profitable than the whole. Marcus parked across the street, positioning them with a clear view of the shop while maintaining distance. We need to be smart about this. That's not just a chop shop. Look at the security cameras, the way the workers are moving. This is a professional operation. Emma studied the facility, her tech background allowing her to assess the security setup with professional interest. Multiple cameras, motion sensors, and what looked like reinforced door frames. The kind of investment that suggested the shop's legitimate business was just a front for something more lucrative. I'm going in, Emma said. Like hell you are. Marcus's voice carried the authority of someone who'd kept people alive in more dangerous places than Oakland auto shops. We observe, we gather intelligence, then we plan an approach. While they finished destroying my father's car? Emma's voice rose, then she caught herself. Emotion was a luxury she couldn't afford right now. Every minute we wait is another piece of him they're selling off. Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression darkening. Maya's in trouble. That was my contact at SFPD. Vincent Torres just walked into the safe house building. He's got 2 men with him. Emma's blood went cold. How did he find us? Professional tracking, probably. These guys have resources. Marcus was already starting the engine. We need to... No. Emma's voice cut through his planning. Maya and Sophia are safe. You chose that location for a reason, and Elena's people are watching. But if we leave now, if we let Torres dictate our movements, we'll never get ahead of this." She pointed toward the shop where her father's Mustang sat, violated and broken. "He's using my car as bait, hoping I'll do exactly what we're doing. Rush in without thinking. But there's something he doesn't know about me." "What's that?" Marcus asked. "I didn't build $100 million company by being predictable." Emma pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found the number she needed. The call connected on the second ring. "Turner Cybersecurity. This is David." "David, it's Emma. I need you to run a deep background check on an address in Oakland. I'm sending you the coordinates now." "Miss Turner? You're supposed to be in Singapore until—" "Change of plans. How quickly can you get me property records, business licenses, financial connections?" 20 minutes, maybe less. Are you okay? You sound— "I'm fine." Send everything to Marcus Rivera's secure email. "And David? This is classified. No records of the search, no backup files." Emma ended the call and turned to Marcus. "Your turn. Call Elena's police contact. I want to know if there are any ongoing investigations into Ramirez Custom Motors, any connections to Vincent Torres, any federal interest in the operation." "Emma," Marcus said carefully, "what are you planning?" "I'm planning to get my car back and end Torres's leverage over my family." Emma's voice carried the same cold determination that had closed hostile takeovers and crushed corporate rivals. "But first, I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." The information came in faster than expected. David's background search revealed that Ramirez Custom Motors was owned by a shell company that traced back to Torres's financial services operation. Elena's police contact confirmed that the shop was under surveillance by a joint federal task force investigating money laundering and stolen vehicle trafficking. Most importantly, the shop's security cameras were connected to a wireless network that Emma's cybersecurity expertise could penetrate given the right equipment. The Mustang isn't just evidence of Torres's operation, Emma realized as she absorbed the intelligence. It's sitting in the middle of a federal investigation. If we can document what they're doing to it, if we can prove the connection between the shop and Torres's lending operation, we can give the feds everything they need for a RICO case. Elena finished, but we'd have to get close enough to gather that evidence. Marcus was already shaking his head. Too dangerous. These people have killed for less than what you're proposing. Emma looked across the street at her father's car, remembering his voice from 9 years ago. Sometimes the right thing is also the hardest thing, Em. That's how you know it's worth doing. Maybe, she said quietly. But some things are worth the risk. As if summoned by her words, a familiar figure emerged from the shop's office. A tall man in an expensive suit who moved with the confident swagger of someone accustomed to getting his way. Even from a distance, Emma could see Vincent Torres's smile as he surveyed the operation that had turned her father's memory into profit. The hunt was about to become very personal. Vincent Torres examined the stripped Mustang with the satisfaction of a man who understood leverage. From their surveillance position across the street, Emma watched him run his hand along the car's exposed frame, his gesture almost intimate in its possessiveness. He knew she was watching, had probably orchestrated this entire display for her benefit. "He's baiting us," Marcus observed, his voice tight with professional frustration. "This is exactly what he wants. You hear, emotional, making decisions based on anger instead of strategy." Emma's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Elena, who had remained at the safe house. "Torres left building 20 minutes ago. Maya and Sophia secure, but Maya wants to talk to you. Says it's urgent." "We need to get back," Emma said, though her eyes remained fixed on Torres as he gestured toward her father's car, clearly giving instructions to the shop workers. "But first, I want him to see me." "Emma, that's strategic." She stepped out of the Honda before Marcus could stop her, walking to the chain-link fence that separated the street from the shop. Torres noticed immediately, his head turning toward her with predatory interest. Even across the distance, she could see his smile widen. Torres said something to his men, then approached the fence with leisurely confidence. He was younger than Emma had expected, early 40s, handsome in the way that came from expensive grooming and regular exercise. His suit was tailored, his shoes Italian leather. Nothing about him suggested the stereotypical loan shark. He looked more like a successful entrepreneur who happened to traffic in desperation. "Miss Turner," Torres called out, his voice carrying easily across the space between them. "I was hoping we'd have a chance to meet. Your sister speaks of you often." "Mr. Torres." Emma kept her voice level, professional. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Torres glanced back at the Mustang, its violations stark in the morning sunlight. "Funny thing about ownership. Your sister signed all the proper paperwork, transferred the title legally. From my perspective, this vehicle was collateral on a loan she couldn't repay. From my perspective, you're a predator who exploits desperate people." Harsh words from someone who's never missed a meal, never had to choose between rent and medicine for a sick child. Torres moved closer to the fence, close enough that Emma could see the calculation in his eyes. "Your sister made choices, Ms. Turner. Adult choices with adult consequences." Marcus appeared at Emma's shoulder, his presence a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Torres noticed him immediately, his gaze shifting to assess this new variable. "Military bearing," Torres observed. "Let me guess, executive protection? Your sister mentioned you had some security concerns. Business rivals, perhaps?" The casual mention of business rivals sent ice through Emma's veins. Torres knew about David Kim, knew about the threats that had necessitated her security detail, which meant he'd done extensive research on her vulnerabilities. 30 seconds, Marcus murmured, his voice barely audible. "Then we leave." Emma nodded, then addressed Torres directly. "What do you want?" "A conversation. One business person to another. I think you'll find my terms more reasonable than your sister's emotional response might suggest. I don't negotiate with criminals." Torres's smile never wavered. "Ms. Turner, I run a legitimate financial services company. I help people when traditional banks won't. Sometimes that involves risk, and risk requires appropriate compensation." He gestured toward the Mustang. "This vehicle represents security on a $50,000 loan. Your sister defaulted. I'm simply protecting my investment. By destroying it? By liquidating assets to recover what I'm owed. Basic business principles." Torres paused, studying Emma's face. "But I'm a reasonable man. Perhaps we can find a solution that benefits everyone." Emma felt Marcus's hand on her arm. Time to go. But Torres's next words froze her in place. "I understand you have a board meeting tomorrow. Something about expanding into Asian markets? It would be unfortunate if certain information about your family's financial difficulties became public just as you're trying to close new partnerships." The threat was delivered with casual precision, designed to demonstrate exactly how much Torres knew about her business operations. Emma realized that Maya's debt had been transformed into something much more dangerous, a weapon aimed directly at everything she'd built. "Think about it," Torres continued, as Marcus guided Emma back toward the Honda. "I'll be in touch soon." The drive back to the safe house passed in tense silence, Emma's mind racing through possibilities and consequences. Torres wasn't just threatening her family. He was threatening her company, her reputation, everything she'd sacrificed to build. And he was doing it with information that could only have come from extensive surveillance and research. They found Maya pacing the safe house living room while Sophia colored at the kitchen table, seemingly oblivious to the adult tension surrounding her. Maya looked up as they entered, her face pale with anxiety. "Emma, I need to tell you something. About Torres. About how this started." Maya glanced toward Sophia, then lowered her voice. "It wasn't just medical bills. There's something else." Emma felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. "What else?" "When I first went to Torres for money, I didn't just need it for Sophia's treatments. I needed it because—" Maya's voice broke slightly. "Because someone was blackmailing me. About you." The room went silent except for the soft sound of Sophia's crayons moving across paper. Emma stared at her sister, understanding dawning like cold water. "David Kim," she whispered. Maya nodded miserably. "He approached me 6 months ago. Said he had information about your business practices, about how you'd stolen his code to build your company. He wanted me to get close to you again, to find evidence he could use in court." Emma's hands clenched into fists. David Kim hadn't just been harassing her, he'd been systematically targeting her family, using Maya's love for Sophia as leverage to turn sister against sister. I refused, Maya continued quickly. I told him to go to hell, but then he threatened to release fabricated evidence anyway, to destroy your reputation whether I helped him or not. And Sophia got sick, and the medical bills started piling up, and I didn't know what else to do. Emma closed her eyes, seeing the web of manipulation and exploitation that had ensnared them all. David Kim's vendetta against her had made Maya vulnerable to Torres's predatory lending. Torres had used Maya's desperation to gain leverage over Emma. And now all three of them, Emma, Maya, and Sophia, were trapped in a web of competing threats and conflicting loyalties. We're going to end this, Emma said quietly, opening her eyes to meet her sister's gaze. All of it. Kim, Torres, the whole thing. How? Maya asked. Emma looked around the safe house. At Marcus reviewing security protocols with Elena. At Sophia innocently coloring pictures of dinosaurs. At her sister, who'd been trying to protect everyone, and had instead endangered them all. By being better at this than they are, Emma's phone erupted with alerts at exactly 3:47 a.m. Maya nodded slowly. They'll realize they're not employees, they're loose ends. Emma pulled up Torres's communication logs, finding the encrypted messages between him and his lieutenants. The conversations revealed a man growing increasingly paranoid, planning to eliminate not just the Turner sisters, but several of his own operatives who knew too much about his blackmail network. Send this to his top enforcer, Emma said, highlighting a message where Torres discussed removing Tommy and his crew after the Turner situation was resolved. Let them see what loyalty gets them in Vincent Torres's organization. As Emma executed her digital assault and Maya reached out to contacts in Torres's network, Marcus prepared for the physical confrontation that would come when their electronic warfare forced Torres into desperation. But Emma had one more card to play, one that would turn Torres's greatest strength into his fatal weakness. Elena, she said, I need you to call your federal contact. Tell them to get ready for the biggest financial crimes bust in San Francisco history. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Tommy Brennan's phone buzzed with an encrypted message at 4:23 a.m. The attachment contained financial records and communication logs that made his blood run cold. 5 years of loyalty to Vincent Torres, 5 years of collecting debts and enforcing consequences, and now he was reading his own death sentence in clinical digital text. Plans to eliminate Tommy and his crew after Turner resolution. Too much exposure. Recommend overseas disposal. Tommy stared at the message, recognizing Torres's analytical writing style, his casual discussion of murder like it was a business expense. The enforcer who'd grown up in foster care, who understood abandonment in his bones, realized he'd been working for another man who would discard him when convenient. 20 minutes later, Tommy was standing outside the warehouse where Torres held Sophia Turner Rodriguez. But instead of reporting for duty, he was making a phone call. Ms. Turner, this is Tommy Brennan. We need to talk. Emma answered the unknown number with Marcus and Elena flanking her. The safe house transformed into a war room filled with laptops, surveillance feeds, and tactical equipment. Maya sat across from her, hands clenched, waiting for news about her daughter. Mr. Brennan, Emma said, recognizing the name from Elena's intelligence reports. I assume this isn't a social call. Your sister's kid is safe for now. Tommy's voice carried an edge of barely controlled rage. But Torres is losing his mind in there. He's talking about cutting losses, eliminating witnesses. All of them. Emma felt ice form in her stomach. Including Sophia. Including everyone who can connect him to this operation. Me, my crew, your sister, the kid. Tommy paused, and Emma could hear the sound of traffic in the background. I got kids of my own, Ms. Turner. What Torres is planning... That's a line I won't cross. Marcus leaned into the phone. What's the situation inside? Torres has 6 men with him, plus the warehouse security. But half those men just got the same message I did. They know they're marked for elimination. Tommy's voice carried grim satisfaction. Loyalty's a funny thing. It disappears real quick when you realize it only goes one way. Emma's mind raced through possibilities, calculating odds and variables with the same analytical precision she used for corporate acquisitions. Mr. Brennan, what do you need from us? Proof that Torres is done, that his operation is finished. Something concrete enough that my crew knows they're better off cutting deals with the feds than going down with him. Emma was already typing, accessing the financial records she'd compiled during her digital assault. Check your phone in 30 seconds. She transmitted everything: Torres's client lists, his blackmail network, the federal task force evidence, and most importantly, the communication logs showing his plans to eliminate his own people. Security breaches at her office building, unauthorized access attempts on her company's servers, and a cascade of system failures that could only mean one thing. David Kim had launched his coordinated assault. She bolted upright from the safe-house couch, where she'd been catching restless sleep, immediately checking the feeds from her company's security cameras. The building appeared empty, but Emma's cybersecurity training recognized the sophisticated nature of the attack. Kim wasn't just trying to steal data. He was trying to plant fabricated evidence that would destroy her reputation. "Marcus," she called softly, not wanting to wake Sophia. "We have a problem." Within minutes, the safe house had transformed into a command center. Elena coordinated with her police contacts, while Marcus assessed physical security threats. But it was Maya who spotted the real danger first. "Emma," her sister whispered, staring at her phone. "Torres just texted me. He says he has Sophia." Emma's blood turned to ice. They all looked toward the bedroom where Sophia should have been sleeping. Then Maya was moving, Emma close behind. The bed was empty, window open, screen carefully removed from the outside. "Professional extraction," Marcus observed grimly, examining the window. No signs of struggle. They took her while she was asleep. Emma's phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. She answered on speaker. "Miss Turner." Torres's voice was calm, businesslike. "I trust you're beginning to understand the scope of your situation. If you hurt her..." "No one will be hurt if you're reasonable. I'm texting you an address. Come alone, bring 10 million in cryptocurrency transfers, and your niece will be returned safely." 10 million? I thought Maya owed you 50,000. Torres's laugh held no warmth. "Market conditions have changed. Your sister's debt has become, shall we say, more valuable given your family's resistance to reasonable negotiation." The call ended. Emma stared at the address Torres had sent, a warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of location where screams wouldn't carry and bodies could disappear. "It's a trap," Marcus said immediately. "He's not planning to let any of you walk away." Maya was shaking, her maternal instincts warring with the impossible mathematics of the situation. "Emma, just pay him. I don't care what it costs." "He's not going to stop at 10 million, Emma interrupted. "Men like Torres don't release leverage once they have it. This ends with all of us dead or under his control." Elena looked up from her phone. "I've got backup from the federal task force, but they need time to get into position. At least 2 hours. "We don't have 2 hours, Emma said, her mind racing through possibilities. "But maybe we don't need them." She thought about her father's lessons, about building something that lasted, about protecting what mattered most. The Mustang had been just the beginning. Torres had orchestrated everything to get to this moment, to force Emma into a position where she'd have to choose between her wealth and her family. But Vincent Torres had made one critical miscalculation. He assumed Emma would choose like a victim instead of like a predator. "Marcus," she said quietly, "how do you feel about turning the hunter into the hunted?" Emma's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, lines of code streaming across the screen in the pre-dawn darkness of the safe house. While Marcus coordinated tactical positions with Elena, Emma was fighting a different kind of war, one that played to her strengths rather than Torres's. "What are you doing?" Maya asked, watching her sister work with an intensity that reminded her of their father repairing engines in their childhood garage. "Hunting," Emma replied without looking up. "Torres thinks he understands leverage, but he's never dealt with someone who built a cybersecurity empire from nothing." The first phase was reconnaissance. Emma had already penetrated Torres's financial network during their confrontation at the chop shop, planting dormant code that activated now like sleeper cells. Bank records, communication logs, client databases, all flowing onto her screen in real time. Jesus, Elena breathed, reading over Emma's shoulder. Look at this client list. Half the city council, 3 federal judges, a dozen police captains. Predatory lending is just the surface operation, Emma said, her voice tight with concentration. Torres is running a blackmail network. He loans money to people in positions of power, then uses their desperation to control them. Maya leaned closer, studying the financial records. That's how he knew about your business rival, about your security detail. Someone on this list has been feeding him information. Emma highlighted a series of payments from Torres's operation to a consulting firm called Meridian Analytics, David Kim's company. The connection was elegant in its simplicity. Kim had been paying Torres for inside information about Emma's vulnerabilities, while Torres had been using Maya's debt to Kim as leverage against both sisters. They've been working together from the beginning, Emma realized. Kim needed dirt on me for his lawsuits, Torres needed access to high-value targets. Maya's situation gave them both what they wanted. Marcus appeared behind them, checking his watch. Federal backup is still 90 minutes out. But I've got a different idea. He spread building schematics across the kitchen table, detailed layouts of the warehouse where Torres was holding Sophia. Elena's contact provided these. The building has been under surveillance for 3 months as part of the task force investigation. Surveillance means cameras, Emma said, understanding immediately. And cameras mean network access. Can you get into their security system? Elena asked. Emma was already typing, her cybersecurity expertise allowing her to trace network pathways like a bloodhound following a scent. Better than that. I can turn their own security against them. The warehouse security system was sophisticated but not impregnable. Emma created a cascade of false alarms, motion detectors triggering in empty rooms, door sensors reporting breaches that didn't exist, cameras cycling between fabricated feeds that showed intruders where none existed. There, she said, pointing to a monitor display showing Torres's men scrambling to respond to phantom threats. They're chasing ghosts while the real assault comes from where they're not looking. Maya watched her sister orchestrate chaos with the same methodical precision she'd once used to build her company. Emma, what about Sophia? All this confusion. What if something goes wrong? Emma's fingers paused over the keyboard. The question struck at her deepest fear, that her technological warfare might endanger the child she was trying to save. But then she remembered Torres's voice, his casual mention of market conditions and changing terms. Maya, she said quietly, Torres was never planning to release Sophia. The warehouse isn't an exchange point. It's where he disposes of problems. The words hung in the air like poison. Maya's face went white, but her expression hardened with a resolve Emma hadn't seen since their childhood. What do you need me to do? Maya asked. Emma looked at her sister, the woman who'd sold their father's car to save her daughter, who'd refused to betray family even under blackmail, who'd accepted help without surrendering her dignity. Maya knew Torres's operation from the inside, understood the psychology of desperation that he exploited. Help me turn his own people against him, Emma said. You know how these men think, how they justify what they do. If we can show them that Torres is planning to eliminate witnesses, it was enough evidence to bury Torres for multiple lifetimes, enough to guarantee federal protection for anyone who testified against him. Tommy's phone chimed with the incoming data. Emma could hear him scrolling through the files, his breathing growing more labored as he absorbed the scope of Torres's criminal enterprise. Jesus Christ, Tommy whispered. He's got judges, police captains, city council members. This whole thing is bigger than I thought. It's also over, Emma said firmly. The federal task force is moving in within the hour. Torres is finished whether he realizes it or not. The question is whether you're going down with him or helping us save an innocent child. The line went quiet for long moments. Emma could imagine Tommy weighing his options. Loyalty to a boss who'd already marked him for death versus the chance to do something right for once in his criminal career. There's a service entrance on the east side, Tommy said finally. I can get it open in 10 minutes. But Torres has your niece in his office on the second floor. and he's getting more paranoid by the minute. Marcus was already studying the building schematics Elena had provided. Can you create a distraction? Something to draw his attention away from the child? Better than that, Tommy replied. Give me 5 minutes to talk to my crew. If they see the evidence you just sent, if they understand what Torres really thinks of them, this thing will resolve itself. Emma heard the call end and turned to Maya, who'd been listening with the desperate intensity of a mother whose child was in mortal danger. This could work, Emma said, though she kept her voice carefully neutral. Tommy has access, he knows the layout, and if his crew turns against Torres… What if they don't? Maya interrupted. What if Torres realizes what's happening and decides to eliminate the only witness who can connect him to everything? It was the question Emma had been avoiding, the possibility that their rescue attempt might trigger the very violence they were trying to prevent. But as she looked at her sister, at the woman who'd sacrificed their father's car to save her daughter, who'd endured blackmail and threats without betraying family, Emma realized that some risks were worth taking. Maya, she said quietly, do you trust me? Her sister's laugh held no humor. Emma, I sold your most precious possession to criminal loan sharks. Trust isn't exactly our strong suit right now. But would you trust me with Sophia's life? Maya studied Emma's face, seeing past the success and wealth to the sister who'd held her during thunderstorms when they were children, who'd taught her to drive in their father's Mustang, who'd built an empire but never forgotten where she came from. Yes, Maya whispered. I trust you. Emma nodded, turning back to her laptop where federal communications were beginning to flood in. The task force was mobilizing. Tommy's crew was receiving evidence of Torres's betrayal, and David Kim's corporate accounts were being frozen as law enforcement connected him to the blackmail network. But in a warehouse across the city, a 6-year-old girl sat in a criminal's office, unaware that her fate was being decided by people who'd never met her, but understood that some things, family, innocence, the chance to do something right, were worth any price. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. It's starting. Torres doesn't know it yet, but his empire just collapsed from the inside. The final gambit was in motion, and Emma Turner was about to discover whether she'd saved her family or doomed them all. 6 weeks after the warehouse confrontation, Emma sat in her Pacific Heights penthouse, watching fog roll across the bay while Maya assembled Sophia's new nebulizer at the kitchen table. The morning routine had become familiar: coffee for the adults, chocolate milk for Sophia, medications dispensed with the practiced efficiency of a mother who no longer had to choose between rent and prescriptions. The official story, according to the federal prosecutors who'd handled the Torres case, was remarkably clean. Vincent Torres and David Kim were facing federal charges that would keep them both behind bars for decades. Tommy Brennan and 3 of his associates had accepted plea agreements in exchange for testimony, their cooperation earning them witness protection and new identities. The warehouse raid had proceeded without casualties, Torres surrendering when he realized his own men had turned against him. But Emma knew the real story was messier, more complicated, written in the spaces between official reports and court documents. Aunt Emma? Sophia looked up from her coloring book, where she was creating an elaborate scene involving dinosaurs and what appeared to be a rocket ship. Mommy says we're going to fix Grandpa's car. Can I help? Emma smiled, setting down her coffee cup. Of course you can help, but first we need to go see it. The drive to the restoration shop in Berkeley felt different than Emma's previous journeys across the bay. Maya sat in the passenger seat of Emma's Tesla, no longer the desperate woman who'd sold their father's Mustang for survival money. She'd started classes at City College 2 weeks ago, business administration with a focus on nonprofit management, while working part-time at Turner Cybersecurity's newly established community outreach division. I still can't believe you're paying for the restoration, Maya said as they crossed the bridge. The car was… It was in pieces, Em. Frame damage, missing engine, interior completely destroyed. Marcus found a specialist who works with insurance companies on total loss vehicles. Emma replied. He says we can rebuild it better than new while keeping the original VIN and maintaining its historical authenticity. What Emma didn't mention was that the restoration was costing more than the car's original value, or that she'd had to source parts from collectors across the country. Some things couldn't be measured in dollars, like the look on Maya's face when she'd first seen the Mustang being loaded onto the recovery truck, or Sophia's innocent question about whether Grandpa would be proud of them for saving his car. Berkeley Classics occupied a converted airplane hangar, filled with vehicles in various stages of resurrection. The owner, Jake Martinez, had worked on everything from vintage Ferraris to muscle cars, but he'd taken special interest in the Turner project after learning its history. "Ladies," Jake called out as they entered the shop, his voice carrying the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely loved his work. "Perfect timing. We just finished the frame repair and got the new engine mounted." Emma felt her breath catch as they approached the work bay. The Mustang sat on a hydraulic lift, no longer the violated skeleton she'd seen in Oakland. The frame had been straightened and reinforced, painted in primer that made it look like a ghost of its former self. But the proportions were right again, the stance proud and purposeful. "We kept every original piece we could salvage," Jake explained, running his hand along the driver's side door. "The door panels were repairable, believe it or not. And we found a numbers matching 289 volts 8 from a guy in Texas who specializes in Ford restorations." Sophia pressed her face against the work bay window, studying the engine with the intense curiosity of childhood. "It looks different from the pictures Mommy showed me." "That's because it's going to be better than the pictures," Emma said, lifting her niece so she could see over the safety barrier. "Jake's going to make sure it runs perfectly, looks beautiful, and will last for another 50 years. Maya walked around the car slowly, her fingers tracing lines where rust had been cut away and new metal welded in place. "Dad would have loved this," she said quietly. "He always said the car wasn't about what it was, but what it could become with enough care and attention." Emma joined her sister, both women studying their father's car in its transitional state, no longer broken, not yet whole, but full of potential. It struck her that the Mustang's restoration paralleled their own relationship, damaged by years of misunderstanding and neglect, now being rebuilt with patience and deliberate attention. "There's something I need to tell you," Maya said, her voice carrying the weight of confession. "About why I really sold the car." Emma tensed, preparing for another revelation, another layer of complexity in a situation that had already cost them both so much. "I could have asked you for help with Sophia's medical bills," Maya continued. "I had your number, your email, your assistant's contact information. I could have swallowed my pride and asked for a loan. But you didn't. Because I was angry." Maya's voice cracked slightly. "Angry that you'd succeeded where I'd failed. Angry that you'd escaped our childhood poverty while I'd stayed trapped in it. Selling the car. It was the one way I could hurt you the way your success had hurt me." Emma closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of guilt and regret that had shadowed their relationship for years. "Maya, let me finish." Maya's voice strengthened, carrying the authority of someone who'd found her own way through difficult truths. "I thought your success meant you'd forgotten where you came from, forgotten what family meant. But watching you these past weeks, seeing how you fought for Sophia, how you risked everything to get this car back." Maya paused, wiping her eyes. "I realized I was wrong. You didn't abandon our family. You just showed your love differently than I expected." They stood in silence for several minutes, watching Jake's team work on the engine while Sophia asked excited questions about pistons and carburetors. The shop smelled of metal and oil and possibility, the same sense that had filled their father's garage when they were children. "I want to make you a business partner," Emma said finally. "Not charity, not family obligation. A real partnership in the community outreach division." Maya looked up, surprised. "Emma, I don't know anything about running a business. You know about survival. You know about making impossible choices and living with the consequences. You know about protecting what matters most, even when the cost seems unbearable." Emma met her sister's eyes. "Those are exactly the skills we need to help people who are facing the same predatory lending that Torres used against you." The idea had been forming in Emma's mind since the warehouse raid, crystallizing as she'd watched federal prosecutors build their case against Torres's network. The Loan Sharks operation had thrived because it targeted people who had nowhere else to turn, single mothers like Maya, small business owners facing cash flow problems, families dealing with medical emergencies. Turner Cybersecurity's Community Outreach Division could provide financial literacy programs, emergency assistance funds, and most importantly, early intervention before desperation made people vulnerable to predators. "You'd trust me with that kind of responsibility?" Maya asked. "I'd trust you with anything," Emma replied. "You're the strongest person I know, Maya. You just needed someone to remind you of that." Jake approached with a tablet showing digital renderings of the completed restoration. The Mustang would be painted in its original candy apple red, with a black interior and chrome details restored to showroom condition. But he'd also incorporated modern safety features and performance upgrades that would make it reliable for daily driving. "Timeline is about 8 weeks, Jake said. "Maybe less if the parts deliveries stay on schedule." Emma nodded, then turned to Sophia. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should we tell Jake to make it extra shiny?" Sophia bounced with excitement. "Yes! And can we put racing stripes on it, like Lightning McQueen?" Maya laughed, the first genuine laugh Emma had heard from her sister in years. "We'll think about the racing stripes. But first, we need to make sure it's exactly the way Grandpa would have wanted it." As they prepared to leave the shop, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Dinner tonight? There's something I want to discuss." Over the past 6 weeks, Marcus's role had gradually shifted from professional protection to something more personal. The threats that had necessitated Emma's security detail were gone. David Kim was facing federal charges, Torres's organization had been dismantled, and the federal task force had eliminated most of the related criminal networks. But Marcus had continued coming around, helping with Sophia's school pickup, joining family dinners, becoming part of their reconstructed routine. Emma looked at Maya, who was explaining engine mechanics to her daughter with patience and enthusiasm. She thought about the restored Mustang, about second chances and the possibility of building something beautiful from broken pieces. She thought about Tommy Brennan, somewhere in witness protection with a new identity and a chance to be better than his past. She thought about the community outreach programs they would build, the families they might help avoid the desperation that had nearly destroyed them all. "Maya," she said as they walked toward the Tesla, "I think Dad would be proud of us." Her sister smiled, lifting Sophia into the car seat with practiced ease. "I think so too, even if it took us a while to figure out what family really means." Emma started the engine, pulling out of the shop's parking lot with the Golden Gate Bridge visible in the distance. The fog was beginning to lift, revealing the city where they'd all grown up, where they'd all made mistakes and found ways to heal from them. In 8 weeks, they would drive their father's car home together. But Emma was beginning to understand that home wasn't a place or a possession. It was the people who chose to stay, to forgive, to build something lasting from the pieces of what had been broken. The rebuilding was just beginning. 8 months later, Emma Turner stood in her garage at dawn, running her fingers along the pristine surface of her father's restored Mustang. The candy apple red paint gleamed under the overhead lights, every chrome detail reflecting back her image like a mirror. Jake Martinez had exceeded every expectation. The car looked better than it had in 1967, while retaining every element that made it authentically theirs. But today wasn't about preservation. Today was about legacy. "Ready, Aunt Emma?" Sophia's voice carried from the garage entrance, where she stood wearing a miniature racing helmet that Marcus had surprised her with the previous week. At 7 years old, she'd grown 3 inches and gained the confidence that came from having a stable home, proper medical care, and adults who prioritized her safety above everything else. "Almost," Emma replied, making final adjustments to the driver's seat. "Remember what we practiced? Feet on the pedals, hands at 10 and 2, check mirrors before we move." Sophia recited the driving lesson basics with the seriousness of someone who'd been waiting for this moment for months. Maya emerged from the house carrying a thermos of coffee and wearing the kind of smile that had become common since she'd found her footing as director of Turner Cybersecurity's Community Resilience Initiative. Her nonprofit division had helped 43 families avoid predatory lending in the past 6 months, providing emergency assistance, financial literacy education, and legal support to people facing the same desperation that had once driven her to Vincent Torres. "She's been awake since 5 a.m., Maya said, handing Emma the coffee. "I found her reading the car manual you gave her." Emma laughed, remembering her own childhood obsession with understanding how things worked. Dad always said the best drivers know their machines. Marcus appeared in the garage doorway, no longer wearing the tactical gear and earpiece that had defined their early relationship. His security firm had expanded into corporate consulting, helping companies protect themselves from the kind of coordinated attacks that David Kim had orchestrated. But this morning he was just Marcus, the man who'd become part of their family through crisis and chosen to stay through the quiet rebuilding that followed. "Beautiful morning for a driving lesson," he observed, studying the fog-free sky that promised clear conditions for their planned route through Golden Gate Park. Emma had chosen the location carefully. The park's winding roads would provide Sophia with a variety of driving challenges while maintaining complete safety. More importantly, it was where their father had taught both Emma and Maya to drive, continuing a family tradition that had started with their grandfather in this same car decades earlier. "Before we go," Emma said, crouching down to Sophia's eye level, "I want to tell you about your grandfather." Sophia settled onto the garage floor with the patient attention of a child who understood she was about to hear something important. Maya and Marcus joined them, creating an informal circle around the restored Mustang. "Your grandfather, Michael Turner, bought this car in 1967 when he was 22 years old," Emma began. "He worked double shifts at the docks to save enough money for the down payment. It was the first thing he'd ever owned that was completely his." "Was he a good driver?" Sophia asked. "He was a careful driver," Maya interjected. "He always said that driving wasn't about going fast. It was about getting where you needed to go safely, with the people you cared about." Emma continued the story, describing how their father had used the Mustang for everything: commuting to work, family road trips, teaching his daughters parallel parking in empty lots on Sunday afternoons. How he'd maintained it meticulously, changing the oil himself, polishing the chrome until it gleamed, treating it less like a possession than like a member of the family. "After your grandmother left," Emma said, her voice softening, "this car became the way your grandfather showed us that some things last. That even when life gets difficult, even when people disappoint you, there are still beautiful things worth taking care of." Sophia absorbed this information with the gravity that children brought to family stories. "And then he gave it to you?" "On my 16th birthday. He put the keys in my hand and said, 'This car has all our stories in it, Em. Take care of it, and it'll take care of you.'" Emma looked at Maya, remembering their father's words differently now. At 16, she'd heard them as responsibility, as pressure to maintain something precious. But 38 years old, she understood that he'd been talking about more than automotive maintenance. He'd been talking about family, about the stories that connected generations, about the importance of passing something meaningful to the people who came after you. "And that's what we're doing today," Emma continued. "We're adding your story to all the others. Teaching you to drive this car, so that someday, when you're old enough, you can teach someone else." They moved outside to the empty parking lot where Emma had set up the basic driving course. Sophia climbed into the driver's seat with ceremony, adjusting the mirrors and checking the pedals exactly as she'd been taught. Emma took the passenger seat while Maya and Marcus watched from a safe distance. "Okay, sweetheart," Emma said, guiding Sophia through the startup sequence. "Remember, the car is powerful, but you're in control. Start with the basics." The Mustang's engine rumbled to life, the sound rich and deep and alive. Sophia's eyes widened with delight as she felt the vibration through the steering wheel, the connection between human intention and mechanical response that every driver learned to love. They started slowly, basic steering exercises, gentle acceleration and braking, learning to feel the car's responses to subtle inputs. Sophia was a natural, approaching each lesson with patience and focus that reminded Emma of their father's methodical approach to everything he cared about. After an hour of practice, they graduated to the park's main road. Emma watched her niece navigate gentle curves and mild hills, building confidence with each successful maneuver. Maya and Marcus followed in the Tesla, maintaining radio contact and providing additional safety support. "Aunt Emma?" Sophia asked during a pause at an overlook facing the Golden Gate Bridge. "Do you think Grandpa would be proud of me?" Emma looked at this remarkable child, the daughter of a sister who'd found strength in adversity, the catalyst who'd brought their family back together through crisis, the reason they'd all learned to fight for what mattered most. "Sophia," Emma said, "I think your grandfather would be amazed by the strong, smart, brave girl you've become, and I think he'd be proud that his car helped bring our family back together." They spent the afternoon driving through the park, each mile adding to the stories the Mustang carried. Emma thought about the previous 8 months. Maya's graduation from business school, Marcus's proposal, which she was still considering, the community center they were planning to build with funding from Turner Cybersecurity's foundation, Tommy Brennan's letter from Witness Protection, thanking them for giving him a chance at redemption. As the sun began to set, they returned to Pacific Heights. Sophia had logged 37 miles of supervised driving, her first entry in the logbook that Emma had started to document this newest chapter of the car's history. "When can I drive by myself?" Sophia asked as they pulled into the garage. "When you're 16, Emma replied. "Just like your grandfather taught me, and just like I'll teach you properly when the time comes." Maya joined them in the garage as they performed the post-drive inspection, checking fluid levels, cleaning the windshield, covering the car with its protective cloth. It was the same routine their father had followed for 30 years, a ritual of care and attention that honored both the machine and the memories it carried. "Emma," Maya said as they prepared to head inside for dinner, "thank you for all of this. For fighting to get the car back. For helping me find my way. For giving Sophia something to be proud of." Emma hugged her sister, feeling the strength and stability that had emerged from their shared crisis. "Thank you for reminding me what family means." As they walked toward the house, Emma took one last look at the covered Mustang. Tomorrow, Maya would drive it to work. She'd earned her own set of keys the previous month, officially making her a co-owner. Next weekend, they would take it to the community center groundbreaking, where former clients of Maya's program would help break ground on a facility that would provide financial counseling, legal aid, and emergency assistance to families facing predatory lending. The car that had once represented Emma's isolation had become a symbol of connection, restoration, and the possibility of building something beautiful from broken pieces. Some stories ended with justice, or revenge, or closure. But the best stories, Emma realized, ended with the promise of new beginnings, and the knowledge that some bonds, once properly restored, would last for generations. In the garage, beneath its protective cover, the 1967 Mustang waited for tomorrow's adventure, carrying all their stories and ready for whatever came next. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Quote,